Joined by Canucks Assistant Director of Player Development, longtime Canuck as well, Chris Higgins. I say long time. Actually wasn't that long a time. Does it feel like a long time for you as a player, Chris?
I feel like I've been here a long time. I got traded here in 2011.
Well, now you have.
I'm still
I meant
sticking
as a
around,
player. Welcome to the show. Thanks for doing this. It's the middle of the summer, and yet you're just kind of finishing up the hockey year in a lot of ways, with development camp coming to an end. Just your overall thoughts on how that came how they came around, and what ultimately you saw from the players.
I was really happy with how things went. It's been a couple of years since we've had everybody together. So, from the staff perspective, we were all super excited to host the camp and see everybody interact with each other and get to see the players, get to know each other, and kind of see what that internal competition is going to look like. But really enjoyable. The guys were really engaged. The pace and the execution, I thought, was surprisingly really good, especially in the scrimmage. I thought the scrimmage turned out really well for us.
Daniel and Henrik back on the ice. They looked comfortable when they were off the ice as the coaches in that scrimmage game on Thursday. What about their roles? How would you describe sort of how interactive they were with these prospects over the last week?
Oh, they're on the ice. They're on the ice every day with us. So, some of the drills that were tailored towards their skills and their hockey sense, obviously they were a bit more vocal. But I think just even to have those guys out there and from a personal relationship standpoint was really nice for the prospects to see, just the way they handle themselves, their humility, and obviously their intelligence. I think obviously we had like 10 Swedes. 10 out of the 37 guys were Swedes, so it made them feel more comfortable, more familiar. They were able to speak Swedish a little bit, and obviously they're Swedish icons in their country. So it's really nice for those guys to be start their relationship with those guys when they're young. I met Hank and Danny when I got traded here when I was 28. Learned so much more about the game even at that age. For these guys to come in 18, 19 years old and spend some time with the Sedins and start to, pick apart their game. It's all, a big value to us.
I don't know what it was like when you broke into the National Hockey League. Maybe you can take us back and sort of apply it to what went on last week, because between yourself and RJ and the Sedins and Michael Samuelsson and Komisarek and even Jeremy Colleton, all you guys played in the National Hockey League. Like, how important do you think it is to have that sort of resource available to all of these guys as they start on their path to hopefully one day getting a crack in the National Hockey League as well?
I think being a player and having ex-players talk to me in the past, the one thing that I took from those guys was, the emotion that they spoke with. The stories they told, their words were powerful. The way it came out of their mouth, the way they dictated their stories. You could tell it meant a lot to them, that they cared. And I hope that's the impression that we give off when we speak to the players. And I think we do with the staff that we've assembled, is that we care, that we're invested in you guys, that we've been through this journey and we know how difficult it is, and we're not really asking you to do anything that we haven't done ourselves. And I think that's a pretty important message for these guys to hear.
Controlling that launch angle for a young guy's career, how much does that make a difference, do you think? Giving them just a few guiding principles on keeping the body in shape, on nutrition, on professionalism. Was it something missing back in your day? And how much of a misstep can you make by not giving them the right advice here in the early going?
Well, I mean, for me, it's completely changed. I got drafted by Montreal in 2002, and I really didn't hear much from them until I signed after my sophomore year in Yale. Like, I really didn't speak with them. I didn't really have any feedback of my game or anything. I would have died for an ex-player to tell me about my game and break down my game and tell me, what they think I need to work on. So, so in that respect, it's completely different. But, I think with a lot of these guys, you know, they're going to have to adapt and evolve and become a different player. There's rarely, you know, rarely are guys that are scorers and juniors that become scorers in the NHL. You know, usually it's, you know, they need to pick up different nuances of the game. And we help try to point those things out. Hey, I think you should be working on this a little bit more, whether it be, you know, board work or cutbacks or anything really. You know, like just you know, bringing their vision towards some parts of their game that they usually don't take a big look at. I think that was the biggest thing for me was how detailed and how intellectually invested you need to be to play at the NHL level.
I know at these things, you know, it's just drills. So this, you know, you're not really seeing the players in a ton of game action outside of the last scrimmage. But how many times did a player, maybe it's the same player over and over, where it would force you to like skate by one of your fellow instructors of the day, whether it's the Sedin or commissaric or something, and just you mumbled something under your breath, like "Holy cow, that kid!" Blah 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 blah. Who did anybody give you those moments over the course of the few days?
I feel like, you know, like sometimes you're that salty ex-player. I feel like it's more the opposite. Like, holy shit, you know, pick it up, man. You know, like. You know, I think with probably the way some of these guys move now, with you know, I think that obviously, you know, what stands out to me is usually that, you know, when I was going to these camps as a player, there were probably 6 or 7 of the defensemen were, you know, those stay-at-home defensive defensemen, and now just the way these guys move now is and the skill level, I think, and the shooting ability, you know, everything's better. Honestly, I think, you know, physically, I think these kids are more ready than they've ever been to jump in. I think, you know, in my opinion, it's more the mental side that they lack. You know, the maturity, the ability to deal with criticism, I think, and their personal standards and accountability. I don't think, you know, they're not as ready for now. You know, physically, obviously they are, but, you know, for me on the mental side, especially playing in, you know, getting prepared to play in a market like Vancouver, it takes a special breed of player to seek out that accountability, to seek out, you know, setting a high standard for themselves.
Chris, we talked about the fact that the organization has sort of beefed up this player development department now, and I mentioned some of the names that were on the ice. I know Mike Commissaric is a guy that you go way back with. How is his addition going to impact your workload this year, just in terms of the amount of travel that you have to do to the East Coast? And does it sort of affect some of the things that you'll be able to maybe take on in terms of a workload because you've got now a guy that's handling Eastern North America?
You know what? For as far as Mikey goes, I mean, I've been dying to bounce ideas off of an ex-defenseman. More specifically, I think that's the value for Mike. For me, is, you know, the forwards. You know, that makes sense to me. You know, that's what I've been around my whole life. You know, center and wing position, but the little nuances, the little details of the defensive game. You know, maybe something I just completely don't know or overlooked, and you know, I think those are the little things that I'm really looking forward to have those discussions about. You know, all the different aspects of the defensive position. You know, it's Mikey goes to, like, he's going to bring in a lot of energy. He's eager to get going. And I think guys are going to feed off his energy.
And I'm just curious too, again, strengthening the department, Daniel and Henrik in season, like, will the player development group be able to work with prospects out in Abbotsford beyond the team practices? Or once guys are there, like, do you have to be careful about stepping on Jeremy Colleton's toes in any way, and the work that the coaching staff is doing there? How does player development help the guys that are down in Abbotsford?
Well, I think the biggest thing is that now we have, you know, we can call it more of a collaborative effort, right? Like, it's not just me and RJ anymore. And, you know, with RJ so focused on Abbotsford, it left me to kind of take over a lot of the other players, right? So now, you know, having Jeremy down for this week, establishing that relationship, getting a sense of what he's about. And, now we'll have a lot of eyes with a lot of different opinions. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We're not looking for all the same thoughts from the same players. We welcome, arguments. We welcome different opinions. And I think with the staff we've assembled, we'll hone in on the right message for each player. And I'm really looking forward to that.
We do have some bad news for you. The Canucks have become so deep at winger. I think your comeback plans are stalling out here, Chris. I don't know that there's any room in the top 9 for you right now. What have you made of the offseason?
I'm not looking for the top 9. Maybe that fourth line.
Oh, you're happy with the fourth line?
Maybe just play home games.
What do you make of the big club and what they've done to fortify the forward spots?
I've always been a big fan of Mikheyev. Obviously, the skating ability I think is just a big weapon. His ability to play a penalty kill. I mean, that's obviously something we were in dire need of last year. So and then he's a Russian guy to help out with Kuzmenko and Podkolzin and. That can't be stated away from the rink. So I always liked him. I liked his game, and I think that's a big weapon we've undercover weapon we've added.
Is it almost a detriment to Podkolzin's game that he's versatile? Like in terms of him trying to get into the top 6, guys like Kuzmenko are probably more top 6 only. Is Podkolzin going to have to buy his time, do you think, or bide his time to get into the top 6, given that, he's a pretty conscientious player and coach will probably like that and won't mind that in the bottom?
You know what? I think we're looking for players that lead into that kind of challenge. I'm a big believer in internal competition for ice time. As I remember saying to Hank and Danny over the past week was, when we had those good teams and I was competing for ice time with Yannick Hansen and Mason Raymond, Alex Burrows for, second power play time or some PK time. Like, I felt like I couldn't have a bad practice. That's how thin the line was, for that team is we had to come prepared, to play practice like it was a game because, you're moving down to, in your opinion, maybe that moves you down to the third line for the next game and instead of, playing on the second line or say playing second power play minutes. So, that's where, in my opinion, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for that healthy internal competition for ice time, to push players, to motivate players to have, as good a practice as you can every day. So, I hope that Vasili leans into the challenge and leans into, the high standard that he's going to have to hold himself, every single day with the organization.
Just to apply internal competition to what you saw out at UBC last week, how important is it for you guys as instructors and evaluators to recognize that Jonathan Lekkerimäki is only 17, like he doesn't turn 18 until later this month, and yet you brought in some guys that, played pro in Abbotsford last year and are a little further along on the development curve. And I know RJ talked about, you sort of stressed to those guys with pro experience that they had to lead the way. Did you see that from them, even in a camp like last week?
Yeah, we leaned on those guys, certainly, deliver messages, instead of talking to the whole group, we'll give that message to Chase, or Nielsen or Alex. So we leaned on those guys to, start the drills off and be vocal guys. And, with Lekkerimäki, it's a long week for him. He
Sure.
flies in from Sweden, gets drafted in the first round. He flies out, 2 days later to Vancouver. And, he's probably was just getting used to the time change by the last couple of days of camp. So I'm sure that it's an overwhelm, in my experience, getting drafted in the first round was an overwhelming experience. And then you get, you pop right on the ice with a whole bunch of guys you probably don't know much about. I understand it could be an overwhelming experience for him to jump right into camp like that. And like I said, I think it'll be a week or two when he gets back home to Sweden where he thinks about camp, where he's able to digest it. And we know he'll be a better player, for coming to camp and learning these things.
I got a kick out of the new Elias Pettersson early in the week. He was asked if he knew what was coming at the end of the week, and he said, yeah, I think I've heard we're walking up a hill. You guys got the grind in on Friday. Just overall, what do you, like? I mean, yes, it's such a quintessential part of Vancouver life, but from the camp's perspective, like, what do you guys get out of challenging these guys with the Grouse Grind?
Well, we send them up in groups, right? And your group can't time out until your last guy gets there. So we're just looking for teamwork and helping guys that are struggling, because that's, over the course of the year, everyone's going to struggle and everyone needs to get picked up. So I think that's kind of the message we're sending them for there. But yeah, the grind was, that was only the second time I had done it. I had done it once before, and I did it again Friday with those guys, and I think it's gonna I'm not sure I'm gonna do it again. It was about as awful as I remember it being.
On behalf of us mere mortals, I was looking forward to Chris Higgins, noted fitness freak, in retirement, sort of allowing himself to let go a little bit and inflating a little bit. That's what
I was pulling not to do it, though the rest of the staff wanted to do it, and obviously Hank and Danny wanted to show off because that's what they do. And
but this gig is going to keep you fit. You're going to be in game shape for like another 10 years here.
I got good genetics. I don't need to do much to stay in shape.
Oh, that was more reason to be jealous. Chris, thanks for doing it. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your summer, both here and out east if you get back for family. Have a lot of fun, and we'll talk to you in the fall.
All right, guys. Take care. Thanks.
Chris Higgins, Assistant Director of Player Development for the Vancouver Canucks. And now it's a full staff, as we talked about there. And I think that actually puts a little bit more pressure on that department to see development when when it's one guy. What do you expect that one guy to do? And it was more than just the one guy, but there are now several guys at his level or thereabouts that are expected to produce some development out of these young players.
Yeah, and I shortchanged Yogi Sukovsky, who's the skills coach, and
yeah,
played as a first-round pick, played for Washington among other teams, so another guy that did touch NHL ice. And it was, you're out there at UBC, and I mean, there's all these prospects on the ice, but you can't ignore the fact that all of these coaches as well, like, just incredible resources now.
Yeah.
But you're right. I think that there is this level of pressure. You've invested in the department. It was an area that maybe they had looked past in years gone by and regimes gone by. There's no excuses now. Like, whether it's just, as Chris said, like having this, availability to all of these players. If they have any questions about anything, you have a chance to talk to future Hall of Famers like Daniel and Henrik out there on the ice with them last week at UBC. That's pretty cool. And just interesting, too, to hear Chris talk about Komisarek and needing, and it makes sense. Like, all those guys that I mentioned were all forwards. Like, it would make sense that you would have a guy that played the position at the highest level in the department as well. So it's not so much that Komisarek will cover off the East and that'll allow Chris to stay in the West. It's more they've got this resource in the organization now that played the position. And Mike Komisarek's an outgoing, personal guy. I think he'll do a nice job of relating to some of these young guys that recognize, hey, he climbed the ladder, he got to the NHL. I should probably listen to what he has to say.
And I take it back. Parts of 6 seasons. He's a long time Vancouver Canuck.